So picture this. You're a highly intelligent, fully capable adult at a dinner party in a foreign country. You have a successful career. You manage complex projects. You navigate, really nuanced social dynamics every single day.
Right. You're a functioning adult.
Exactly. But right now, someone has just asked you a simple question about the weather in the language you're trying to learn. And suddenly, your heart rate spikes.
Oh, the absolute dread.
Yes. Your palms sweat, you open your mouth, and your mind just goes completely blank. It's this visceral, paralyzing sensation of sudden incompetence. I mean, it's basically the universal tax we all pay when trying to acquire a new language later in life.
It really is. Your ego is just completely stripped away, and you're left profoundly vulnerable.
You really are. And that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are unpacking a transcript from an educational resource called the Adam and Anna Podcast, which is designed for English beginners.
And superficially, the text is just a lesson on how to talk about your favorite movies, right?
Yeah, exactly. But our mission today is to look way past the vocabulary lists. We are decoding the anatomy of effective language acquisition. We want to examine how these speakers use the universally understood medium of pop culture to basically bypass that dinner party panic we just talked about.
Right, because that panic is really the central hurdle of adult learning. When you acquire your first language as a toddler, you have no ego to bruise.
You just babble and make mistakes freely.
Exactly. But adults carry this massive burden of wanting to appear competent at all times. So the Adam and Anna transcript, it's actually this masterfully constructed environment designed to disarm that adult anxiety.
So they aren't just teaching words, they're
building a highly intentional framework of psychological safety. They use narrative and shared cultural touchstones to lower the barrier to entry so the brain can actually absorb information without shutting down from stress.
Well, let's start with their specific choice of topic then, because they could have chosen to teach vocabulary around, navigating an airport or ordering at a restaurant.
The classics, yeah.
Right. Or even discussing the news. But instead, they anchor the entire lesson around movies. And they don't just pick any random obscure films. Anna shares that her favorite is the animated film The Lion King, focusing on Simba learning to be brave.
A classic hero's journey.
Yeah. And Adam brings up Forrest Gump, categorizing it as a drama, and he focuses on the inspiring nature of a simple man doing great things. These are heavily emotional, culturally ubiquitous choices.
And that comes down to managing cognitive load. Because when you are learning a language, your working memory is heavily taxed. I mean, your brain is simultaneously trying to recall vocabulary, apply unfamiliar syntax rules, and this is huge, physically coordinate your mouth to produce totally new sounds.
Yeah, it's a lot of plates to keep spinning.
It is. So if you introduce a complex or abstract conversation topic on top of that, say, debating the nuances of a political election, the cognitive load just becomes completely overwhelming.
The brain literally cannot process the language mechanics and the complex subject matter at the same exact time.
Right. But movies, particularly universally known narratives like triumphing over adversity, they are pre-installed in our cultural software. We're biologically wired to process narrative efficiently. By framing the lesson around familiar cinema, Adam and Anna drastically reduce the cognitive processing required for the topic itself.
Which frees up mental bandwidth for the actual language acquisition.
Exactly.
It's like trying to learn how to drive a manual transmission car. If you do it on a busy highway in the rain, you're going to crash because you're processing traffic, weather, and the clutch all at once.
Yes. But if you do it in an empty parking lot on a sunny day, you only have to focus on the clutch.
Exactly. The familiar narrative of The Lion King is the empty parking lot. But there is something else happening with these specific movie choices. They are explicitly attaching the new vocabulary to emotional states.
Which is so smart.
Right. Adam isn't just defining the word inspiring using a sterile dictionary sentence. He's linking the word inspiring to the specific feeling of watching Forrest Gump succeed.
And that right there is emotional encoding in action. The hippocampus, which is basically the brain's center for learning and memory, is heavily influenced by the amygdala, which processes emotion.
So the two are physically linked in the brain.
Very closely. Information that carries an emotional charge is prioritized. It's stored much more robustly than neutral information.
So if a learner tries to memorize a list of adjectives like brave, inspiring, sad, funny, just in a vacuum, the brain struggles to retain them.
Because there are no associative hooks. But when a learner maps the English word hopeful onto the warm, resonant feeling they already associate with a beloved film character, They're creating a dense, multi-layered neural pathway.
The word isn't just data anymore.
Right, it becomes a trigger for a recognizable emotional state.
I love that. But I do want to look closely at how they handle the technical aspects of film discussion, because they take a very deliberate, almost simple approach to categorization.
What do you mean?
Well, when breaking down genres, Addit explains drama movies simply as serious stories about real life and real emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And Anna describes animated movies as films using drawings and computer graphics.
Okay.
Now, a film studies professor might argue that animation is a medium, not a genre.
Yeah.
Right? Or that defining drama merely as real life ships away decades of cinematic nuance. Reading this initially, it felt a bit, reductive to me. Why present such flattened definitions of complex categories?
You have to view this through the lens of pedagogical scaffolding. If you overload a beginner with the granular distinctions between, say, a psychological thriller and a neo-noir,
They'll completely freeze up.
total paralysis. The learner needs immediate functional tools to categorize their thoughts. They don't need a comprehensive taxonomy of film theory.
Okay, that makes sense. So by distilling drama down to real life and real emotions, Adam is handing the learner a highly functional mental bucket.
Exactly, a mental bucket. When the learner watches a movie, they can just ask themselves a very simple binary question. Did this feel like real life?
And if the answer is yes, they instantly have the vocabulary word to describe it.
Right. Scaffolding is about providing a temporary, sturdy structure so the learner can stand up and start working. You can always introduce all that autistic nuance later once the foundation is totally secure.
Right. But a sturdy structure doesn't automatically mean the learner will step inside. Understanding the vocabulary is just the passive part of the equation.
Yes, the receptive part.
At some point, the learner actually has to open their mouth and speak, which introduces an entirely different kind of friction. And the transcript addresses this friction with this constant, almost rhythmic drumbeat of reassurance.
They are so supportive throughout the whole thing.
It's wild. Adam and Anna repeatedly tell the listener, everyone starts small, and if you sometimes feel shy to speak English, that's okay, or small practice makes a big difference. They literally pause the instruction constantly just to offer unconditional positive reinforcement.
And that reinforcement is systematically targeting a recognized linguistic phenomenon known as the affective filter.
The affective filter.
Yeah, it was coined by linguist Stephen Kreischen. The affective filter is essentially an invisible emotional barrier in the mind of a learner. When a student is experiencing high anxiety, low self-confidence, or, like at your dinner party, a fear of negative evaluation, this filter goes way up.
And what happens when it's up?
It literally blocks comprehensible input from reaching the language acquisition center of the brain. The lesson could be perfectly designed, but if the learner is stressed, the language simply bounces off.
Oh, wow. So let's use an analogy here. The affective filter basically operates like a bouncer at a very exclusive nightclub.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The nightclub is the language processing center of your brain, and the new vocabulary words are the guests trying to get in. The environment's relaxed and the bouncer's in a good mood. The velvet rope opens, and the new words flow right onto the dance floor.
Yes. But the moment you feel anxious about your pronunciation,
Or terrified of sounding foolish, that bouncer gets aggressive.
Yeah.
He pulls the rope across the door, crosses his arms, and absolutely no new information is getting inside, no matter how hard you study.
that captures the mechanism perfectly, because the bouncer isn't evaluating the quality of the vocabulary, he's evaluating your physiological stress response.
So Adam and Anna's constant reassurance, normalizing shyness and celebrating small victories, it's a deliberate tactic to keep the bouncer relaxed.
Exactly. They are engineering a low anxiety environment where the affective filter remains low. That ensures the target language can actually penetrate the learner's cognitive defenses.
Okay, I understand the need to lower the filter, but I do have a serious critique of the specific methodology they use once that filter is down.
Let's hear it.
Mixed in with
Transcripts systematically building the listener's confidence, they open the door and invite them to step through it.
They aren't asking for a graded essay. They are asking the learner to participate in a digital town square.
The transition from the beginning of the text to the end is just remarkable. It begins in total isolation, with the learner sitting alone, repeating the phrase, "my favorite movie is," over and over just to build physical muscle memory.
And it ends with social integration. The comment section basically becomes a low-stakes proving ground.
Exactly. A learner who an hour prior might have been totally paralyzed by the dinner party scenario you described at the start is now equipped with the vocabulary, the syntax, and the psychological safety required to share a piece of their identity with a global community.
The language has officially moved from theory to practice. It totally recontextualizes the entire deep dive for me. We started by examining a podcast transcript about cinema, but we ended up dissecting a comprehensive architecture for human growth.
Because the lessons embedded in this text extend far beyond the parameters of English as a second language. The underlying principles are universally applicable.
Yeah.
The core message that small daily practice leads to big results is literally the foundation of neuroplasticity. Whether you are attempting to master a foreign language, trying to comprehend a dense new field of study for a career pivot, or simply striving to become a more articulate communicator in your personal relationships, the mechanics remain exactly the same.
You must intentionally lower your own affective filter.
Yes, you have to seek out environments that foster psychological safety rather than cortisol. You must recognize the difference between passively understanding a concept and actively doing the physical, sometimes uncomfortable reps required to master it.
Consistency, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable are the true engines of acquisition.
Absolutely.
You have to be willing to look foolish in the empty parking lot before you can merge onto the highway.
That's the only way to learn.
As we conclude our analysis of this material, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought that builds on this idea of language as a bridge. We've established that the narratives we choose to consume and discuss act as our personal ambassadors when we enter a new social space.
Right, they introduce us.
Exactly. The movie you choose to talk about is often the very first piece of your internal world that you offer up to a stranger. So imagine yourself in that comment section or standing at that intimidating dinner party armed with your new vocabulary. What does the favorite movie you choose to share say about the way you want the world to perceive you?
It is a question that forces you to examine not just how you speak, but the substance of what you are actually trying to say.
It's all about the story you choose to tell. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep protecting your learning environment, keep doing the reps, and we will catch you next time.